Hello everybody, Shinjo here and welcome to my top 10 Pikaclones video. It's not necessarily a negative on these Pokemon, but it's an easy term that I can use to describe them. It's typically an electric rodent that's in a Pokemon region that is trying to fill the same role as Pikachu. Because they're part of the same evolutionary line, I won't be including Pichu, Raichu, or Raichu's Alolan form in this video. There are some questionable choices that I have in here, considering there's 10 slots to fill, but I figured just to have it be 10 to make it a round number. So let's begin. At number 10 we have Plusle. I will say I really like Plusle as a design, but it's unfortunately one of the lesser favored Pikaclones. Its whole gimmick is double battles, and I'm not really sure why they made them like that. They could have made them without the inclusion of the double battle part of their design, inspiration, anything like that. But at the end of the day, I do like their design. It's just not my favorite. And the same thing goes for number 9, which is Minun. I wasn't sure which one I put above the other. You could honestly interchange these. I just put Minun a little bit above because I like the color blue compared to the color red, but at the same time, I'm splitting hairs over two Pokemon that are just kind of mid. Now here's the first one where things are gonna get questionable. Number 8 is Marill. I wasn't sure about including Marill, but since I was already at 9 Pokemon, I decided to make things simple and just include Marill anyway. The reason Marill's all the way back at 8 is because I personally don't consider it a Pikaclone, but because of all the Pokemania back in the day calling Marill Pikablu, I feel like that's justified enough to include Marill. But Marill's so far back on the list that if you don't want to include it, then this could just be a top 9 video instead. Number 7 is Togedemaru. I will say all of these Pikaclones going forward are all relatively good in my opinion, design-wise. It was just a matter of which one I prefer over the other. And when I think of Togedemaru, I think of Sophocles as Togedemaru in the anime. And Sophocles as a character was always just divisive to me, and Togedemaru was an interesting character, essentially always throwing itself on Ash's Pikachu, which was an interesting thing to do. But unfortunately, with a unique type like Electric Steel, it's unfortunately not my favorite Pikaclone. At number 6 is Emolga. And I honestly feel bad including Emolga this far back, but I realistically couldn't put it any further up on the list. While I do like Emolga, and especially Iris's Emolga in the anime, it is just kind of there. It's not a Pokemon that I generally love, but it's not a Pokemon that I generally dislike. So it's around the middle of the list for me, which I feel like is appropriate. Number 5 is Pawmi, and by extension, its evolutions as well. I will say that I really like Pawmi. Its evolutions are certainly odd. I didn't like them when I did my tier list on this region Pokemon. I feel like I softened up on them a little bit, and I really like Pawmi. It's just unfortunate that it evolves into the same Pokemon twice, essentially. I like the electric fighting typing, but considering that I don't necessarily like how its evolutions look, but I really like its base form, I feel like it's fair to put it in the middle of the list. At number 4 is Dedenne. I really like Dedenne. It's a cool thing that in the same gen that introduced the fairy type, they made the Pikaclone electric fairy. But at the same time, I just like that it's so tiny. I legitimately think it's the smallest Pikaclone out of all of them. Maybe second to Pawmi. But there's really nothing more that I can say. I love this chubby dude. I just wish that it had a better moveset. At number 3 is Morpeko. Both forms of it. I probably could have split the Morpeko forms up and took Marill off the list. But Morpeko is the same Pokemon at the end of the day, whether it's happy or sad. I just really like the idea of this Pokemon. It's like Plusle and Minun, where they have an ability that makes it excel in this one way for Plusle and Minun double battles. But with Morpeko, you can play around it and change its typing around and use its Aura Wheel as well. And at the end of the day, I just really like the electric and dark typing on it. It works really well with its two different sides that it has. If I would have one criticism for it offhand, it would be that its shiny is lackluster, but that's a problem for not only Morpeko. But the runner-up spot is Mimikyu. Again, it's not an electric type like Meryl, but since Mimikyu is pretending to be Pikachu, I feel like it's fair to have it on the list. Otherwise, I would take Meryl and Mimikyu off the list and make it a top 8 instead. I will say I'm not as high on Mimikyu as other people are. Mimikyu seems like everybody's protecting it like it's their next child. Mimikyu's fine for me. I've just never had enough opportunity to use one, especially in the Alola region. I do like the gimmick of it. I do like that it's a ghost and fairy typing, which I believe is still a unique typing to only Mimikyu. And I like the background on why it looks like this, and everybody's interpretation of what Mimikyu would look like designed as other Pokemon is really neat as well. But with Mimikyu here, that should tell you all that you need to know that number 1 is Pachirisu. It shouldn't be a surprise because my mascot is a Sinnoh Pokemon, so Pachirisu being number 1 makes a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, tying this back to the anime, I liked Dawn's Pachirisu. It was a really hyperactive Pokemon, which makes sense for something like this. And overall, I just like the fact that a Pachirisu that's probably less than 3 foot was well known in the Pokemon battling community just because of how one person built Pachirisu with Follow Me. The fact that something like this can be considered a world champion is just amazing in my opinion. But that is my top 10 Pikaclones video. And like I said earlier, if you don't want to include Meryl or Mimikyu, then you can just take those 2 away and just have it be a top 8 instead. I just thought it would be easier to make it 10 and just include those 2 anyway. But let me know what you think. Let me know which Pikaclone is your favorite down below. Subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you next time. Momentai.